Welcome, dear listeners. Tonight, let your thoughts drift gently as we take you on a peaceful journey. This is a space for calm, for quiet moments, and for the kind of stories that settle your heart and slow your breath. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes if you wish, and allow the world to soften around you. Now, let's begin with tonight's story. Today's story is titled Whispers of the Ocean: The Reckoning. Act 1, The Quiet Urge to Escape. Evelyn Halden pressed her forehead gently against the rain-speckled window pane of her cramped apartment. Outside, the sky hung low and dull, the city streets glistening from a recent drizzle. The rhythm of distant traffic and the occasional honking horn had long blended into the background noise of her everyday existence. But today, it grated on her nerves more than usual. Inside her living room, the ticking of the antique wall clock matched the restless tapping of her foot. A half-filled cup of herbal tea had gone cold on the side table, untouched for the past hour. She hadn't planned to spend her Friday afternoon like this, restless, staring at nothing, watching clouds drift and lights change without meaning. But perhaps this mood had been building for weeks. Maybe months. The deadlines, the emails, the countless back-to-back meetings she endured as a freelance consultant had eroded her sense of stillness. Her phone sat face down beside her, mercifully silent for once. Yet, instead of relief, a strange ache stirred in her chest, a longing for something quieter, simpler. She opened her laptop, not to work, but to search. She wasn't even sure what keywords to use. Beachfront cabins, last-minute escapes, seaside cottages near me. Click. Scroll. Pause. There it was. A small wooden cottage with faded blue shutters, sitting all alone near a crescent-shaped shoreline, only a few hours' drive away. The photo caught her attention not because of how luxurious it was, but because of how unbothered it looked. Untouched by noise, untainted by pressure. The listing described it simply: an off-grid retreat by the sea. Solitude guaranteed. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. And then, as if on instinct, she booked it. 3 days, 2 nights. She shut the laptop and stared at the wall for a moment, blinking. Had she really just done that? Yes. She had. For the first time in what felt like ages, a breath came easily. She stood, stretched her arms, and looked around. There was no need to pack much. A few changes of clothes, her notebook, an old camera she hadn't used in months, and maybe one of the novels collecting dust on her shelf. She grabbed a small duffel bag and began to toss things in without overthinking. Even her toiletries were minimal: no makeup, no perfume, just her favorite rosemary soap and a bamboo toothbrush. As dusk began to deepen into early evening, Evelyn zipped the bag shut and looked around her apartment. It didn't feel like home anymore, not today. Maybe when she came back, she'd see it differently. Or maybe this trip would unlock something she didn't know she'd been waiting for. She picked up her keys and whispered softly to no one, Just a few days. Just breathe. The drive started the next morning, early enough that the sky was still tinted lavender. The city slowly gave way to the suburbs, and then to open roads flanked by fields dotted with wildflowers and the occasional grazing cow. The further she drove, the lighter she felt, as though the clutter of the past year was being swept off her shoulders mile by mile. By the time she passed a crooked wooden sign that read Bayhaven, 12 miles, the air had already begun to shift. The breeze coming through the car windows carried the unmistakable scent of salt and sand. The road narrowed into tree-lined bends, sunlight breaking through the foliage in golden beams. A feeling of anticipation rose in her chest, not quite joy, but something softer and deeper. A quiet return to self. When she finally arrived at the cabin, it was almost too perfect to believe. The small wooden home sat just beyond a row of dune grasses, its porch facing the wide open sea. Weather-worn steps led up to a front door painted with the same faded blue as in the pictures. The windows were open, curtains fluttering slightly in the breeze. Evelyn parked the car, turned off the ignition, and stepped out. For a moment, she just stood there. No sounds of the city, no phone buzzing, no voices. Just the slow, rhythmic crashing of waves, and the wind rustling through tall grass. She exhaled deeply, fully. The porch creaked under her steps as she approached. She opened the door and was greeted by the scent of old pine wood, sea air, and something faintly citrusy. The cottage inside was simple: a wooden table, a couch draped with a hand-knitted blanket, shelves filled with old books and seashells. No television, no Wi-Fi. Just the basics, and exactly what she needed. She set her bag down beside the couch, took off her shoes, and walked across the cool wooden floor to the back door. It opened onto a small path that led directly onto the beach. The ocean spread before her like a vast sheet of silver and blue, waves rolling lazily to the shore. She stepped onto the path barefoot, feeling the warmth of the sand greet her toes. A gull cried overhead, and Evelyn closed her eyes. She had made it. No emails, no tasks, no deadlines. Only this, the sea, the sky, the breeze, and a long overdue silence. Act 2, on the road to stillness. Evelyn awoke just as the first rays of sunlight began to slip through the gauzy curtains of the cottage's east-facing window. She blinked slowly, her body still wrapped in a kind of weighted softness, a calm unfamiliar to her usual mornings back in the city. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The bed was softer, the air lighter, and then the distant sound of gulls and waves reminded her she had escaped. The early hours held a kind of magic. She slipped on a cardigan and stepped outside barefoot. The porch would cool under her soles. Before her, the morning tide gently nudged the shoreline. The ocean shimmered under a veil of mist. There was no one else in sight. Just miles of uninterrupted beach, waves whispering softly as if sharing secrets only the wind could hear. Evelyn descended the steps and walked toward the water's edge. The sand was damp and firm, scattered with seashells and the tiny prints of nocturnal shore creatures. She crouched to examine a piece of sea glass rounded by time, emerald green, glinting like a jewel. She slipped it into her pocket without thinking. A small token. A promise to herself. She continued walking. Every step away from the cottage felt like a step further into a new version of her life, one where urgency didn't exist, where breadth and presence mattered more than productivity or purpose. As she moved along the shoreline, she noticed a fallen log, sun-bleached and smooth. She climbed onto it and sat, letting her gaze wander over the horizon. There, she stayed. She didn't look at her watch. Didn't need to. Time seemed to stretch and dissolve into the sea foam. She breathed slowly. Fully. Suddenly, the breeze carried the faintest echo of laughter. Startled, she turned her head. A figure was walking along the shoreline in the distance. A man, perhaps in his 30s, barefoot like her, sleeves rolled, hands tucked in his pockets. His golden retriever bounced excitedly around him, occasionally dashing into the waves and back out again. For a moment, Evelyn hesitated. But then she smiled to herself. She wasn't here to hide from the world, just to pause it. The man noticed her too and offered a polite nod as he passed. Nothing more. No small talk. Just the quiet acknowledgement of two people lucky enough to share silence in the same sacred place. Evelyn stayed until the tide reached her feet. By then, the sky had brightened, and the ocean had taken on a shade of aquamarine so brilliant it almost hurt to look at. She made her way back to the cottage, her footprints trailing behind her like a soft history. Back inside, she prepared breakfast: simple toast, fruit, and strong black coffee. She ate slowly, sitting by the wide window, watching the morning grow. A pair of pelicans swooped low across the waves. Somewhere in the distance, wind chimes rang gently from another porch. After breakfast, she pulled out her notebook. The pages had been blank for months, untouched, as if waiting for this very moment. She uncapped her pen and began to write, not a to-do list, not an agenda, but thoughts. Memories. Fragments of herself long buried under meetings and messages. I think I forgot how to be quiet, she wrote. But the sea remembers for me. She paused, her eyes resting on the horizon again. The sea seemed to breathe. And maybe, so did she. Later, she curled up on the small couch with the blanket wrapped around her. No screens. No noise. Only the ticking of the old clock, the sound of waves just beyond the walls, and the occasional creak of the wooden cottage as it settled into the sun. She hadn't realized how deeply exhausted she'd been. And now, in this gentle stillness, Evelyn Halden felt something stir inside her. Not an answer. Not a plan. But an opening. A door. Something new had begun. Act 3, The Cottage's Secret Voice. The sunlight filtered through the curtains in soft golden stripes, casting moving patterns across the cottage walls as the wind danced outside. Evelyn stretched lazily on the couch, her fingers resting on the last line she'd written in her notebook. "But the sea remembers for me." She smiled faintly at the words. It had been so long since anything poetic had come out of her pen. The stillness here, the absence of obligation, was waking parts of her long forgotten. But there was something else that was stirring too, something curious. She stood and wandered toward the bookshelf, a simple wooden rack leaning slightly to one side. Most of the books were paperbacks with cracked spines and faded covers. A few titles were unfamiliar, handwritten even, suggesting they might have been left behind by past visitors. One book in particular stood out, The Driftwood Letters. It was bound in dark blue linen, with no author's name, no summary on the back. Evelyn opened it, expecting fiction or maybe a collection of poems, but instead found letters personal, intimate, handwritten on aged parchment-like pages. The first line struck her. "To whoever finds this, I hope the sea speaks to you too." Her breath caught. Letter after letter followed. Some were addressed to myself, others to you, or simply dated with no addressee at all. They spoke of longing, loss, the ache for stillness. They were raw and beautiful, as if the house itself had been collecting the emotions of its guests like the shore collected driftwood. She read slowly, captivated. One passage made her pause. "I came here to forget his voice, but now I hear it in the waves." Not haunting. Just unfinished. Unfinished. She gently closed the book and held it to her chest for a moment, wondering how many people had sat where she now sat, wrapped in the same silence, searching for pieces of themselves in the surf and sand. Setting the book down, she rose and decided to explore the rest of the cottage. Behind the kitchen, there was a narrow hallway leading to a small back room she hadn't noticed before. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, dust motes floated lazily in beams of sunlight cutting through a round window. The room was spare, with a single armchair, a writing desk, and an old phonograph in the corner. On the desk, there was a small stack of postcards blank, except for the backs, which bore a familiar looping handwriting. "If you feel something, write it down. Leave it behind. The sea will keep it safe." Beside the postcards sat a box of ink pens and a set of old, salt-stained envelopes. Evelyn stared at them, something about this quiet invitation calling to her. Without thinking, she sat down at the desk and picked up a pen. She didn't write much. Just a few lines. "I didn't know I needed this place. I didn't know how far I'd drifted. Thank you, whoever you were." She slid the postcard into an envelope and tucked it into the box with the others. There were maybe a dozen inside messages from other quiet souls who had passed through these same walls. Evelyn sat in the chair for a long while, listening. To the creak of the wood, the rustle of the leaves outside, and the waves, always the waves just beyond. There was no music playing, and yet, it felt like the house had a rhythm. A heartbeat. One not of brick or timber, but of memory. That afternoon, as the sun climbed high and warm light spilled into every corner of the little cottage, Evelyn made a choice. She wouldn't just stay here. She would listen. And maybe, she thought, she would begin to heal. Act 4, Footprints Between the Tides. The tide had begun to retreat by late afternoon, leaving glistening trails of sea foam and crushed shells in its wake. Evelyn stood at the edge of the porch, barefoot once more, feeling the soft caress of salt air against her cheeks. The day had shifted subtly. Gone was the stillness of morning. In its place came something more kinetic. Not rushed, not loud, but filled with gentle movement, as if the coastline itself had taken a breath and begun to stretch. She felt it too. A pull. She grabbed her scarf, loosely wrapped it around her neck, and stepped off the porch. The sand was warm where the sun still kissed it, cooler and firmer near the water. She followed the curve of the beach, letting instinct guide her rather than direction. The world here was an orchestra of natural whispers, waves curling and collapsing, gulls cawing in the distance, the breeze rustling dune grass like fingers brushing wind chimes. Each sound seemed to call her deeper into the wild hush of the coast. After several minutes, she spotted him again. The man from earlier. This time, he was sitting on a driftwood log, tossing a small stick into the surf. His golden retriever would dash after it, barking with joy, then return triumphant, tail wagging wildly. The man laughed a quiet, worn-in laugh, like someone who hadn't used it in a while but was relearning how. Evelyn hesitated. She didn't want to intrude, but as if sensing her presence, the man looked up and smiled. "You made it out for sunset," he called out, voice friendly but unforced. Evelyn nodded, walking slowly toward him. Didn't seem right to miss it. He patted the log beside him. Plenty of space. She accepted the invitation, brushing off a few grains of sand before sitting. The dog trotted over, sniffed her politely, and plopped down with a contented sigh. "His name's Tully," the man said. "He's the real reason I come out here." Evelyn chuckled. "I'm Evelyn." "Jonas." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the waves rhythmically lap at the shore. Far off, the sun began its descent, painting the horizon in bands of rose gold and amber. The scene would have felt surreal if it hadn't been so profoundly real. "I've been coming here since I was a kid," Jonas said after a time. "This beach, it's one of the few places that's never asked anything of me." Evelyn glanced at him. There was something guarded in his eyes. Not sadness exactly, but a kind of careful remembering. "You stay in the cottages nearby?" she asked. He nodded. "The one with the faded green door?" "A little up the hill. I'm in and out. Work keeps me moving, but I always circle back here." She paused. "Did you ever find a book there?" "The driftwood letters." Jonas laughed gently. That thing's still there. God, I must have written in that thing a dozen times over the years. Evelyn turned to him, intrigued. You wrote some of those? Yeah. When I didn't have anyone else to say things to. I used to think the sea was the only one listening. Evelyn stared out at the ocean, feeling her breath hitch slightly. It still listens. They didn't speak for a while after that. The sun dipped lower, its light brushing the water with fire. Tully barked once at a crab scuttling by and chased it playfully until it vanished beneath the sand. Just as Evelyn began to relax again, her eyes caught something unusual on the beach ahead, a long, dark object partially buried near a tangle of seaweed. Her curiosity flared. Mind if I check that out? She asked. Jonas followed her gaze. Go ahead. This beach throws up all kinds of things. Evelyn rose and walked toward the shape. As she got closer, the outline became clearer. It wasn't driftwood. It wasn't seaweed either. It was a box. A small, iron-bound wooden chest, aged and worn, with rust flecking its corners. The tide had recently uncovered it, leaving wet sand clinging to its surface. She knelt beside it, brushing away the remaining grit. There was no lock. No engravings. Just a tiny latch. For a brief second, Evelyn hesitated. Then, slowly, she opened it. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were several items: a pocket watch with a cracked glass face, a faded photograph of a woman standing near the cliffs, and a letter still folded, sealed with red wax. Stamped in the shape of a seashell. Her heart beat faster. She turned back toward Jonas, who was now standing, watching her with a curious frown. Did you leave this here? She called. He shook his head. Never seen that before. She lifted the letter carefully, brushing the wax with her thumb. Something about it felt old, purposeful, forgotten but not discarded. Tully barked again once, sharply. Evelyn looked back at the box. The sea laughed closer now, almost as if it wanted to reclaim what had been found. But the letter had waited. Act 5, the letter that waited. The envelope was warm from her hands, even though the air had turned cooler. The wax seal was unbroken, its tiny seashell emblem almost too perfect for something so weathered. Evelyn held it delicately, like it might crumble or vanish at the slightest wrong move. Behind her, the tide curled close, hissing and murmuring in its strange language, like it knew exactly what she'd found. Jonas joined her quietly, Tully padding beside him with his wet tail swishing like a metronome. His gaze fell on the letter, then shifted to the box. You sure you want to open that? He asked, not skeptically, but like someone asking if you were ready to hear something that couldn't be unheard. Evelyn nodded. It found me. Or I found it? Either way, it feels meant. Jonas didn't press. He knelt beside her, their knees almost touching in the sand, the quiet between them deepening. The sky above was painted in copper and mauve as the sun neared the horizon, casting long shadows and igniting the surface of the water with streaks of fire. She broke the seal. The wax cracked like a whisper. Inside was a single sheet of parchment, yellowed with age but unmarred by time. The handwriting was old-fashioned, elegant, slanted, written in ink that had faded to a soft brown. Evelyn began to read aloud. To the one who walks with the sea beside them. You do not know me, but I knew you would come. Not your name, not your face, but the ache. The quiet burn in your chest that pulled you here. I felt it too. The sea does not just bring waves. It carries memory. And if you listen, truly listen, it will offer stories. I buried this letter when I knew I wouldn't return. Not because I feared the end, but because I hoped someone else might begin. Inside the pocket watch is the voice of the last day I stood here. In the photograph, a choice not taken. And in this letter, a reminder, the tide doesn't erase. It transforms. Be well. Be still. Listen. M. A breeze stirred as she finished, carrying the final word gently toward the ocean. The letter fluttered slightly in her hands, as if breathing. Neither of them spoke for a while. Even Tully sat quietly, ears perked toward the waves. Finally, Jonas exhaled. That's beautiful. Evelyn traced the last signature with her finger. Who do you think M was? I don't know, he said softly. But I think they were like us. Someone who needed to come here to remember how to feel alive. She looked back at the items in the chest. The photograph showed a woman standing on a cliff, her face obscured by wind-blown hair, the sea raging behind her. There was no date. No location. Just the impression of choice of something left unsaid. Then, the pocket watch. Evelyn picked it up. The glass face was cracked, the hands frozen at 6:17. She wound it gently. Click. Tick. Tick. A faint sound filled the air. At first, she thought it was just the tide. But no, it was music. A soft, tinny melody. A lullaby, almost. The kind played by old music boxes in forgotten attics. Jonas leaned in. That song. You've heard it before? She asked. He shook his head slowly. No. But it feels like I should have. The sound was delicate, ephemeral, like it might fade if they moved too fast. It lingered for nearly a minute, then stopped with a final click. Her throat was tight, and she didn't quite know why. Something in that melody had brushed a place deep inside her, something that felt less like memory and more like echo. She closed the watch gently and placed it back in the box. The tide had nearly reached them now, licking at the edges of the seaweed where the chest had once been half buried. "We should move it," Jonas said, "before the sea takes it again." Evelyn hesitated. Then she nodded. Together, they carried the box further inland, placing it on the porch steps of her cottage, safe from the waves. The sun had finally dipped below the horizon. The sky bled into indigo, and stars began to prick through the velvet dark. "Stay for tea?" Evelyn asked, her voice quiet. Jonas smiled. "Only if it comes with questions you haven't asked yet." She laughed genuinely, unexpectedly, and gestured him inside. The kettle whistled softly in the kitchen. Evelyn poured hot water over loose chamomile and lemon balm, letting the herbs bloom in the silence between them. Jonas sat at the wooden table, watching her, but not intrusively. Just present. On the table lay the envelope and the photograph. Tully snored gently by the fireplace, already curled into a warm puddle of fur. "This place," Evelyn said finally, "it's more than just quiet. It's like it remembers everyone who's ever come through." Jonas nodded. "Maybe we're not just visitors. Maybe we're pieces of its memory, too." She handed him a cup. "You think we're supposed to do something with what we found?" He took a sip, thoughtful. "Maybe. Or maybe just not forget it." Outside, the sea whispered against the shore. And in the small wooden cottage, two strangers, now something more, sat with a letter, a photo, and a melody that didn't belong to them, yet somehow did. They didn't know it yet, but something had been set in motion. Something the sea had been waiting to return. Act 6, The Memory Beneath the Stones. The night had settled softly around the cottage, its quiet hum more profound now. The air was cool, crisp, with only the faintest scent of salt in the breeze. Inside, the warmth of the fire crackled, throwing soft shadows across the wooden beams of the ceiling. Evelyn and Jonas sat at the table, cups of chamomile tea forgotten between them. The photograph lay flat between them, its edges curling slightly with age. The woman in the picture seemed to almost peer through the lens, her expression a mix of longing and strength. "Do you think this is her?" Evelyn asked, her voice soft as she traced the edge of the photo. Jonas leaned forward, eyes narrowing in thought. "Could be. But there's something familiar about this place. The cliffs, the wildness of it. It feels like it's part of the story we're meant to uncover." Evelyn glanced back at the chest. The letter, the watch, the photo, it all felt like pieces of a puzzle that no one had yet bothered to solve. But she couldn't shake the feeling that they were meant to. Suddenly, a knock on the door broke the stillness of the room. Jonas looked at Evelyn, eyebrows raised. She stood, pushing her chair back, and walked to the door, wondering who could be out there at this hour. She opened the door to find an older man standing on the porch. He was tall, his hair a mix of gray and white, his skin weathered from years in the sun. A woolen scarf was draped loosely around his neck, and his eyes were sharp, almost too sharp. "Good evening," the man said, his voice gravelly but kind. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Evelyn hesitated for a moment before stepping aside to let him in. "Not at all. What brings you here?" The man stepped inside and gave a small nod. "Name's Edward. I live just down the way, in the old stone house by the cove. Saw you on the beach earlier today." Jonas stood, his face curious. "We were out for a walk." "I'm Jonas, this is Evelyn." Edward glanced at the photo on the table, then back at Evelyn, his gaze steady. "I think you've found something that belongs to me." Evelyn felt her heart skip a beat. "Belongs to you?" Edward nodded slowly, stepping toward the table. His hands shook slightly as he reached for the photograph. "This picture. This was taken a long time ago." "A lifetime ago, really?" He paused, his face clouding over with something unreadable. "Who is she?" Evelyn asked, her voice a whisper now. Edward's eyes softened, but the sadness behind them was palpable. "Her name was Mary. She was the one who told me to leave. Told me that one day, the sea would hold the answer." He exhaled sharply, as if the memory had been buried deep within him. Jonas and Evelyn exchanged a glance. "And the letter?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a murmur. Edward's gaze shifted to the envelope, still on the table. His expression grew distant. "The letter was meant to be found by someone who would listen, someone who understood. It was Mary's final act of love. She knew the sea would call her back, but she wanted to leave something behind, something that might help the next soul who wandered here." Jonas stood up from his chair and approached Edward. "Do you know where she is now?" "Where? Where did she go?" Edward's face tightened. "She left. A long time ago. The sea took her. But she left me that message. Left me a warning. It's a message you can't ignore." The air in the cottage grew heavier as Edward's words settled. The fire crackled, but it felt distant, as if the room itself was listening intently. "You need to go to the cliffs," Edward said, his voice low but urgent. "Tonight. Before the tide turns." Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest, her hand instinctively reaching for the pocket watch again. It was warm now, pulsing with the same rhythm as her heartbeat. She wasn't sure why, but she knew this was more than just a story. More than just a photo and a letter. Edward's eyes met hers. There's something waiting for you there. Something she left behind. Without another word, Evelyn nodded. She grabbed her coat, Jonas following her. Edward turned to leave, but before he did, he spoke again, his voice almost a whisper. Don't let the sea take you too. The night was colder now, the wind whipping more fiercely as they approached the cliffs. The stars above were sharp, like shards of glass, cutting through the deep blue sky. Evelyn held the watch in her hand, its tick-tock now louder in the silence. They reached the edge of the cliff, the same view she had seen in the photograph. The sea stretched out below, vast and untamed, its surface reflecting the moonlight in a way that seemed almost unnatural. What now? Jonas asked, his voice tight with anticipation. Evelyn stepped closer to the edge, looking down at the dark waves crashing violently against the rocks below. She said the sea holds the answer, she murmured. I think we're meant to find it. As if in response, the wind picked up, carrying a faint whisper too soft to be real. But it wasn't the wind. It was a voice, distant, yet familiar. Listen. Listen closely. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She could hear it again, the same melody from the pocket watch, echoing from the sea. It was a lullaby, old and soft, haunting in its simplicity. Jonas reached for her arm. Evelyn, what is that? The sea seemed to answer. The ground beneath their feet shifted, and a stone half buried by time began to rise from the edge of the cliff, carried by the waves. It was the shape of a small altar, ancient and weather-worn, covered in moss and barnacles. Evelyn's heart raced as she stepped closer. She could see it now, a carving etched into the stone, worn but still visible, a seashell. And beneath it, a small, glimmering object. She bent down, reaching for it, her fingers trembling. It was another letter. But this one was different. This one was for her. Act 7, The Echo of the Sea. The letter in Evelyn's hand felt impossibly warm, as though it had been waiting for her to find it for a very long time. She turned it over carefully, eyes narrowing as she saw the faint traces of ink on the fragile paper. There was no seal this time, no wax. Just a message, waiting for her to uncover it. Jonas stood beside her, Tully sitting obediently at his feet, sensing the tension in the air. The winds were stronger now, howling through the cliffs and crashing waves below them. Evelyn glanced at him briefly before unfolding the paper. The handwriting was familiar, too familiar. The same elegant script from the letter she'd found in the cottage. She began to read aloud, her voice trembling slightly as the words resonated deeply in her chest. To the one who listens, who dares to seek the answers buried in the sea's embrace, know this. I left this place once, knowing it would keep its secrets until the time was right. I left because the sea had called to me, a voice I could no longer ignore. The voice you hear, the song you feel in your heart, it is not just the wind. It is the memory of all who have come before. I know you found me, found my letters, my story. And now, you must complete it. Follow the path the waves will show you, and you will see what I have left behind. What we have left behind. At the cliffs where the wind whispers and the tide speaks, you will find the truth hidden beneath the earth, waiting for the one who listens. Go now. Go where the sea leads, and the past will be unveiled. M. Evelyn's voice trailed off, her breath catching as the last line sank in. The sea. The wind. The whispers. It's almost like she knew, Jonas muttered, stepping closer to her. It's like she was waiting for us to get here. Evelyn nodded, feeling the weight of the letter in her hand. She was. But why? Why now? The wind howled once more, as if in answer. She looked out at the waves again. They seemed to pulse with purpose, rhythmic, steady. The tide was pulling back, drawing the water toward the horizon, and in the distance, a rocky outcrop jutted out of the sea, an ancient formation, shaped like the remnants of a forgotten temple. We have to go there, Evelyn said, her voice firm with a sense of resolve. We have to see what's there. Jonas followed her gaze, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight of the outcrop. The cliffs. They look like they've been waiting for us too. The two of them didn't hesitate. They moved swiftly, walking along the edge of the cliff, the path narrow and slippery underfoot. The waves crashed loudly beneath them, the rhythm of the sea almost urging them forward. Tully bounded ahead, oblivious to the danger, his paws kicking up the sand and dirt as he ran along the jagged path. After a short while, they reached the base of the outcrop. The cliffs towered above them, and the sea churned violently beneath the rocks. Evelyn's heart raced as she gazed upward, her eyes scanning the jagged stone. She could feel it, the pull. The sea, the song, the invitation to come closer. There's something here, Jonas whispered, his voice barely audible over the roar of the waves. We need to find it. Evelyn nodded. She stepped forward, her hand trailing along the rocky surface, feeling the grooves and carvings beneath her fingertips. As she moved further along, something caught her eye, an indentation, a small hollow in the stone, just large enough for a hand to fit. Without thinking, she reached in. Her fingers brushed against something cold and smooth, and she gasped as she pulled out a small, oval-shaped stone. It was smooth, worn down by the elements, and it had a strange, iridescent quality to it, shifting in the light. The surface was etched with delicate marking symbols she couldn't immediately understand. What is it? Jonas asked, stepping closer to her. Evelyn turned the stone over in her hand, her mind racing. I don't know. But I think it's another piece of the puzzle. Maybe this belongs to the sea. Maybe it's what M left behind. Just as she said the words, the wind picked up, swirling around them with an intensity that almost knocked her off her feet. The sky seemed to darken, the waves becoming more turbulent, crashing against the rocks with increasing force. Suddenly, a voice called out over the wind. A voice that Evelyn recognized immediately, one she had heard before, but this time, it wasn't just in her head. Listen. Listen closely. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat as she turned, her eyes scanning the area around her. The voice was faint, like a whisper carried on the wind. It was coming from the stone. Jonas was staring at her, his face a mix of confusion and concern. Evelyn, what's happening? But Evelyn didn't answer him. She was focused entirely on the voice, the pull of the sea, the rhythm of the waves. She could hear it again, louder now, as if the sea itself was speaking directly to her. You are close now. You are ready. The truth is waiting. Follow the path. Evelyn held the stone tightly in her hand, feeling the energy coursing through it. It was warm now, pulsing like a heartbeat. She felt something stir inside her, a memory, perhaps, or a forgotten instinct. Jonas, it's here, she whispered, her voice trembling. The truth. It's in the stone. With a determined breath, she took a step forward, toward the heart of the outcrop. She knew where she had to go next. Jonas followed her, unsure but resolute. The stone was leading them somewhere, and they had to follow. They moved deeper into the rocks, the path narrowing and the wind howling louder, as if the very air was alive, urging them forward. And then, just as the night seemed to close in around them, they reached a narrow crevice in the stone, a passageway hidden beneath layers of weathered stone and ivy. Evelyn reached out, her fingers brushing the stone walls as she entered. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of salt and earth, and in the flickering light from the small stone lantern she had carried, Evelyn saw it, an ancient altar, carved into the rock, its surface worn but still visible. There, embedded in the stone, was a symbol, a seashell, just like the one in the letter. The sea was calling them, and they were ready to listen. Act 8, The Stone's Truth. The crevice in the stone was narrower than Evelyn had expected, the walls slick with moisture and the scent of earth and salt. The passageway wound deeper into the heart of the cliffs, each step taking them further into the unknown. Evelyn held the small lantern in front of her, its light flickering, casting long shadows that danced eerily on the rock walls. Jonas followed close behind, his footsteps almost silent on the cold stone floor. Tully, who had bounded ahead, was now walking at their side, sniffing at the ground curiously. He was more alert than usual, his ears perked, his nose twitching in the dim light. Evelyn glanced down at him, a strange feeling settling in her stomach. Something felt different here, something ancient, almost sacred. The deeper they went, the colder it became, and the sounds of the crashing waves grew more distant. It felt like the sea itself was fading away, as if they were entering a place outside of time, a place where only the echoes of the past remained. They reached a large chamber at the heart of the cliff, a cavern, perhaps, though the walls were carved with intricate symbols. The air was thick with the weight of history. The stone beneath their feet was smooth and polished, worn by years of touch, yet untouched by time. And there, at the far end of the cavern, stood the altar. The altar was made of the same stone as the cliffs, but it gleamed in the lantern's light. It was as if it had been waiting for them, waiting for Evelyn to find it. The seashell carving was there again, etched deeply into the surface, surrounded by symbols that seemed to pulse with energy. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she approached. Her fingers tingled, as if they were being drawn toward the altar by some unseen force. She looked at Jonas, who was standing a few steps behind her, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. This is what she meant. What M meant. Jonas nodded slowly, stepping forward. "It's like the sea left all of this here for us to find. To understand." Evelyn reached out, her fingers brushing the smooth surface of the altar. The stone was cool, but under her touch, it seemed to hum with life, as if it was alive. She closed her eyes for a moment, the sensation overwhelming. She could almost hear it, the sea's voice, calling to her. Not through the wind this time, but from the very stones beneath her fingers. A soft rumble filled the air, low and deep, like the earth itself was speaking. Tully whined nervously, his fur standing on end, but Evelyn held her ground. Something was happening, something she couldn't yet fully comprehend. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and the stone beneath Evelyn's fingers began to shift. She pulled her hand back instinctively, but the altar didn't stop. The symbols etched into the stone glowed faintly, their lines shifting and moving as if they were alive, as if they were trying to tell a story. Evelyn took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked at Jonas, who was watching her, his face pale. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice tight with fear. I think it's showing us something," Evelyn said, her voice shaking. "It's trying to reveal the truth." The rumbling grew louder, and the stone beneath them cracked, sending a sharp echo through the cavern. Slowly, the altar split down the center, revealing a hidden compartment beneath it. A soft light spilled out, illuminating the cavern with an ethereal glow. Evelyn knelt, her hands trembling, and reached into the compartment. Inside, she found a small box, intricately carved, almost identical to the one they had found on the beach. This one, however, was made of a different material, something heavier, darker, with veins of silver running through it. The box felt warm in her hands, and as she lifted it, the symbols on the altar seemed to pulse, their glow intensifying. She opened the box slowly, not knowing what to expect. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft fabric, was a pendant. The pendant was shaped like a seashell, its surface smooth and polished, but at its center, there was a single, small gemstone shifting in color, from deep blue to emerald green to oceanic teal. Evelyn gasped. It was beautiful, but it felt like more than just a beautiful object. It was powerful, like it was meant for her. She could feel the energy radiating from it, and suddenly, she knew. This was the key to the mystery. The pendant, the box, the stone, it was all connected to the sea, to the voices she had been hearing. Jonas knelt beside her, his eyes wide. What is it? What does it mean? I don't know, Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible. But I think it's what M left behind. It's what we were supposed to find. She held the pendant up, watching as the light danced across its surface. For a moment, everything seemed to stop: the wind, the waves, the earth. It was as if time itself had paused, waiting for something. Then, without warning, a voice echoed through the cavern, soft, familiar, but distant. You have found it? The key to the past. Now you must listen. The sea speaks to those who hear it, and it has more to tell. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The voice. It was M's voice. She had heard it before, in the wind, in the sea, but now it was clearer, stronger. What do we do now? Jonas asked, his voice shaking. Evelyn turned to him, the pendant still clutched tightly in her hand. We listen, she said, her voice steady now. We listen, and we follow where it leads us. Act 9, The Sea's Whisper. The cavern around them pulsed with a low, resonating hum. Evelyn held the pendant tightly, the cool stone against her palm somehow grounding her in the midst of the overwhelming sensation that threatened to overtake her. It was as if the very walls of the cliff had come alive with the sea's presence, its vastness, its depth, its endless pull. Jonas stood close by, his gaze fixed on the pendant as if it were a key unlocking something deeper within the earth itself. Tully, who had remained oddly silent, sat at his feet, ears perked, sensing the shift in the air, the change in the atmosphere. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the pendant, and the glow from the stone pulsed in time with her heartbeat, almost in sync with the waves crashing below them. She glanced up at Jonas, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. We have to understand what it's telling us, she whispered, more to herself than to him. Jonas nodded, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. The voice. M's voice. It said to listen. So, we listen. They stood in silence, the only sound the soft crackling of the firelight from the lantern, and the rhythmic crashing of the waves beneath them. The pendant's glow seemed to brighten, almost as if it were calling to something out in the vast darkness beyond the cliffs. Evelyn stepped forward, feeling an invisible pull towards the edge of the cavern, the light from the pendant illuminating the rocky path ahead. The wind howled, louder now, its voice rising and falling like the deep, ancient breath of the sea. Evelyn closed her eyes, concentrating, willing herself to hear more. The whispers had become louder, more distinct, like an ocean of voices calling from the depths of the earth, from the very heart of the sea. Follow the path of the tides. The sea's memory is long. Your journey is not yet complete. You must follow the waves. The words echoed in her mind, clear and urgent, pulling her toward the cliffs once more. Without thinking, she began to walk, the pendant still glowing softly in her hand, guiding her forward. Jonas followed closely behind her, Tully at his side, his eyes trained on the path ahead, as though he too could sense the weight of what was to come. The walk back to the edge of the cliff felt different this time. The air was thick with energy, as if the very ground they walked on was alive with secrets long buried. They reached the precipice where the sea roared below, the crashing waves sending mist into the air. Evelyn stopped at the edge, her heart racing in anticipation. "This is where it all begins," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Jonas stood beside her, gazing at the endless expanse of the ocean. "I think it's more than just this place. It's everything. The sea. The land. The memories of those who've come before us." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she turned her gaze back to the cliffs, searching for something. The wind tugged at her hair, and the pendant in her hand pulsed again, stronger this time, as if responding to the call of the sea. Her fingers tingled with energy, the warmth from the pendant seeping into her skin. "Look," Jonas said suddenly, pointing to a small, hidden crevice in the rock face. "There's something there." Evelyn's eyes followed his finger. At first, it appeared to be just another part of the rocky cliffs, but as she focused, she could see something glinting in the dim light, a metallic sheen against the stone. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, feeling the pull of the pendant guide her. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the crevice, the sensation of the stone under her fingers sending a ripple of recognition through her. There, buried in the stone, was a small metal plate, rusted with age but still engraved with a set of symbols she recognized from the carvings on the altar. The shape of a seashell. "This is it," she murmured, her voice full of awe. "This is what M was trying to show us." Jonas crouched beside her, his eyes scanning the symbols. "What does it mean?" Evelyn's fingers brushed over the plate, tracing the intricate markings. As she did, the pendant in her hand pulsed again, brighter now, almost blinding. The symbols on the plate began to glow, slowly at first, then more rapidly, as if the stone itself was coming to life. With a soft click, the plate shifted, revealing a hidden compartment beneath it. Evelyn gasped, her heart pounding as she reached inside. Her fingers brushed against something cold and smooth, something familiar yet strange. She pulled out a small, ornate key, its design intricate and delicate, the handle shaped like a sea serpent. The key shimmered in the moonlight, its surface reflecting the ocean's glow. "What is this?" Jonas asked, his voice filled with wonder. Evelyn held the key up, the weight of it settling into her palm. "I think this is the final piece," she said, her voice steady. "The key to everything." Tully barked, a sharp, sudden sound, and Evelyn's attention snapped to the dog. He was standing a few feet away, staring at the horizon, his body rigid. "Do you hear that?" Jonas asked, his eyes wide with concern. Evelyn strained to listen. At first, she couldn't make it out, but then it came soft at first, like a murmur beneath the wind, and then louder, more distinct. The sound of a voice. A song. The same lullaby from the pocket watch, the one she had heard before. The sea was singing. Evelyn turned to Jonas, her eyes wide with realization. It's time. She looked back toward the horizon, her heart racing as the melody of the sea wrapped around her. The waves crashed more forcefully now, the ocean seemingly alive with purpose, as if it were calling them to step forward, to unlock what had been hidden beneath its surface for so long. She held the key tightly, feeling the weight of it, knowing this was only the beginning. The sea had been waiting. And now, so had she. Act 10, The Key to the Past. The wind howled around them, the sea crashing violently against the cliffs, its rhythm growing more intense with every passing second. The key in Evelyn's hand seemed to hum with energy, as though it, too, was responding to the call of the ocean. She held it tightly, her fingers trembling with anticipation. Jonas stood at her side, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his breath visible in the cold night air. Tully, still on alert, sniffed the ground, his ears perked as though sensing something they couldn't. "We have to go down there," Evelyn said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Jonas nodded. "The sea's calling. It's like it's waiting for us." Without another word, Evelyn began to move, her feet carrying her toward the jagged path leading down to the shore. Jonas followed closely behind, Tully trotting at his side, his eyes still fixed on the ocean. The path was steep and narrow, winding through the rocky terrain. The wind pushed against them, but they pressed on, driven by the pull of the key in Evelyn's hand. The sound of the ocean grew louder, the waves crashing against the rocks below, as if urging them to hurry. As they reached the bottom, the full expanse of the beach stretched before them. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silver glow across the water. The air was thick with the scent of salt and seaweed, the ground beneath their feet cool and damp. Evelyn's eyes scanned the shoreline, searching for any sign of what the sea was trying to show them. The key in her hand pulsed, its glow faint but steady, and she felt an overwhelming sense of knowing, like she was on the edge of something ancient, something forgotten. "There," Jonas said suddenly, pointing toward a cluster of rocks near the water's edge. "I think that's where it's supposed to go." Evelyn followed his gaze, her heart pounding. The rocks were jagged and uneven, worn down by years of crashing waves, but there was something about them that felt deliberate. She moved toward them, the key in her hand now feeling warm, alive. As she approached, she saw it a small indentation in the rock, just large enough for the key to fit. It was the perfect shape, the perfect size. She had no doubt now. Taking a deep breath, Evelyn stepped forward and inserted the key into the indentation. The moment it touched the stone, the air around them seemed to shift, the wind howling even louder, the waves crashing with more force. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. A soft click sounded from the rock, and before her eyes, the stone began to shift. Slowly at first, then with more urgency, the rock parted, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. A faint, golden light emanated from the opening, casting long shadows on the sand. Evelyn stepped back, her breath catching in her throat. Jonas stood beside her, his eyes wide with awe. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn didn't answer. She was too focused on the light, the soft glow that seemed to beckon her closer. With a trembling hand, she reached forward and slowly pulled open the compartment. Inside, nestled in a bed of soft velvet, was an object, a small, intricate box, its surface covered in ornate carvings. The box was made of a dark, polished wood, with silver inlays that shimmered in the moonlight. It was beautiful, elegant, yet mysterious. Evelyn's fingers shook as she reached for it, the weight of it heavy in her hands. "This is it," she whispered, her voice filled with reverence. "This is what we were meant to find." Jonas stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the box. "What's inside?" Evelyn didn't answer. Instead, she turned the box over in her hands, searching for a way to open it. There, on the bottom, was a small engraving, another seashell, the same symbol that had appeared on the pendant, the stone, and the altar. She ran her finger over the engraving, and with a soft click, the box sprang open. Inside was a rolled parchment, its edges frayed with age. Evelyn carefully removed the parchment and unfurled it, her heart racing as she read the words written in elegant script. "To those who seek, to those who listen, to those who dare to understand. The sea holds more than just memory. It holds life. It holds death. It holds all that has come before and all that will follow. The tides are not just waves, they are the cycles of time. And those who can listen to the rhythm of the ocean can hear the stories of the past, the truths that have been hidden from the world. I have hidden my final gift for you here, where the sea meets the earth. It is the key to the future, the answer to the questions you have yet to ask. But remember this, not all truths are meant to be uncovered. Some things are better left in the depths of the ocean, where they belong. I leave this with you, for you are the ones who have heard the call. You are the ones who will complete the cycle. M. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She had been right, the letter, the pendant, the key, it had all led them here, to this moment, to the final piece of the puzzle. But there was something more in the letter, something unsettling. Some things are better left in the depths, Evelyn whispered, the words echoing in her mind. Jonas looked at her, concern etched across his face. What does it mean? I don't know, Evelyn said, her voice trembling. But I think we've opened something we weren't meant to. Suddenly, a sharp cry rang out from the sea. It was distant at first, like the sound of a gull, but then it grew louder, closer. Tully growled, his body tense, and Jonas stepped back, his eyes scanning the shoreline. What is that? He asked, his voice thick with fear. Evelyn's heart raced as the sound grew louder. It wasn't just the wind or the sea. It was something else, something living, something ancient. The cry echoed through the cliffs, reverberating in her chest. "Something's coming," Evelyn said, her voice barely audible. And then, as if in response, the waves crashed violently, sending a shower of foam into the air. The ground beneath them trembled again, more forcefully this time, as if the very earth was shifting. They were no longer alone. Act 11, The Tide's Reckoning. The wind howled louder than before, its cold bite sharpening as the waves crashed against the cliffs with a deafening roar. Evelyn held the box in her trembling hands, the letter still open on the sand beside her, its words echoing in her mind like a distant memory. Some things are better left in the depths of the ocean, where they belong. Her pulse quickened as the sound grew, like a rising storm pulling at the very core of the earth. Tully growled again, his fur bristling, his body rigid with fear. The very air around them seemed to hum with an ancient energy, the tension so thick that Evelyn could almost taste it. The ground beneath them shuddered, sending vibrations up her spine. "Evelyn," Jonas whispered, his voice tight with panic. "What's happening?" She turned to him, eyes wide. "I don't know. But I think we've awoken something we weren't meant to." Before either of them could say anything more, the cry rose again, louder this time, closer, more desperate. It wasn't a gull. It wasn't the wind. It was something living, something calling. And it was coming for them. Evelyn's heart raced as she instinctively took a step back, her fingers tightening around the box. The pendant still glowed faintly in her pocket, its light pulsing in time with her heartbeat. The waves roared again, this time much louder, and Evelyn realized with a sickening jolt that the tide was rising faster than it should. It wasn't the natural rhythm of the ocean, it was as if the sea itself was moving against its own will, rising up as if to reclaim what had been taken. Jonas stepped forward, his eyes scanning the horizon. "We need to leave," he said, urgency in his voice. "Whatever's coming, it's not normal." But Evelyn didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the water. There, at the edge of the shore, something was emerging from the depths of the ocean. At first, it was barely visible, just a flicker in the water, a glimmering light beneath the waves. But then, slowly, it rose higher, more solid, until the unmistakable shape of a figure emerged from the sea. It was a woman, or what had once been a woman. Her skin was pale and shimmering, her hair flowing like kelp in the water, her eyes wide and empty. She floated above the water, her body suspended in mid-air, her movements graceful yet unsettling. She was surrounded by a soft, ethereal glow, as though she were a ghostly manifestation of the sea itself. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she stepped forward, unable to look away from the figure. The woman's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. The crashing waves, the wind, everything faded into the background. "You've come," the voice echoed in Evelyn's mind. It was soft, distant, but unmistakable. The same voice she had heard in the wind, in the sea, in the very stones. You've come to unlock the truth. But the truth is not what you think. Jonah stepped back, his face pale. Evelyn, what is this? What is she? The figure's mouth didn't move, but Evelyn heard her words clearly. I am the keeper of the tide. I am the guardian of all that has been forgotten. And you have disturbed the balance. Evelyn's chest tightened as she realized the weight of her actions. The pendant, the key, the stone, the letters, it had all led them here. But the sea was not a peaceful place, not a place of healing or serenity. It was a force of nature, wild and untamable, and it demanded respect. You are not meant to know the truth, the keeper continued, her voice colder now, like the depths of the ocean. Some things are buried for a reason. Some things must stay forgotten. Evelyn swallowed hard, her mind racing. We didn't mean to disturb anything, she said, her voice shaking. We just wanted to understand. The keeper's eyes narrowed, and the air around them seemed to grow heavier. Understanding comes at a price. The sea does not forgive easily. You have taken what was never meant for you. Jonah stepped forward, his voice trembling. How can we undo it? How can we make it right? The keeper's eyes flashed with a dark light. You cannot undo what has been done. But you may be able to survive. A sudden rush of wind swept through the beach, and the waves surged higher, crashing violently against the rocks. The figure of the keeper began to shift, her form becoming more translucent, as if she were being pulled back into the sea. The truth lies in the heart of the ocean. But it is not for you to claim. And with that, the keeper vanished, dissolving into the crashing waves, leaving only the sound of the sea in her wake. Evelyn and Jonah stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the water, the echoes of the keeper's words lingering in the air. Tully whined softly, and Evelyn's grip tightened around the box, her heart still pounding in her chest. She didn't know what had just happened, but she knew one thing for certain. The sea had claimed something from them. And it was not done with them yet. Act 12, The Ocean's Reckoning. The beach was silent now, save for the crashing waves that seemed to pulse with a new rhythm. The wind had died down, but a strange chill lingered in the air, as though the earth itself was holding its breath. Evelyn stood still, her fingers still wrapped tightly around the small box, her heart racing in her chest. The image of the keeper, the ethereal figure who had risen from the sea, haunted her mind. You have disturbed the balance, she could still hear the words echoing in her head. Jonah stood beside her, his face pale, his eyes searching the horizon. What just happened? He asked, his voice thick with confusion and fear. Who was that woman? Evelyn shook her head, unable to answer. She didn't know who the keeper was, but she knew she had seen something ancient, something powerful. The sea wasn't just a force of nature, it was something more, something that held the truth to all the mysteries they had uncovered. "We need to go back," Evelyn said, her voice firm, though her hands still trembled. "We need to understand what she meant. We can't just leave it like this." Jonas nodded, but the unease on his face remained. "But how do we even begin to understand? What did she mean by the balance? And how do we fix it?" "I don't know," Evelyn whispered. "But I think the key is in the box. We have to figure out what it's telling us." They walked back to the cottage in silence, the weight of their discovery pressing down on them. The box felt heavier with every step, its dark surface almost too smooth, as if it was meant to be held only by someone chosen. As they entered the cottage, Evelyn placed the box on the table, her fingers still tingling from the touch of the key. She stared at it, the silence of the room pressing in around her. It was strange, almost surreal. Everything that had happened in the last few hours felt like a dream, but the weight of the box and the look in Jonas's eyes told her it was real. "Let's open it," Jonas said, his voice low, almost hesitant. Evelyn nodded. She reached for the box, her heart pounding as she ran her fingers over the intricate carvings. She could feel the energy radiating from it, as if it had been waiting for her to unlock its secrets. Slowly, she lifted the lid. Inside was another letter. But this one was different from the others. Its edges were torn, the paper old and fragile. The handwriting was familiar, but the ink had faded with time, the words barely legible. Evelyn unfolded the letter carefully, her hands shaking as she read aloud. "To the one who follows the tide, who dares to listen to the ocean's call, know this. The sea is not a place of rest. It is a place of trials, of tests. Those who seek the truth must be prepared to face what lies beneath, for the sea has more than just memories. It holds the power to reshape the world, to bend time, to alter the course of fate. You have awoken what was buried, what was meant to remain hidden. But now that you have found it, you must follow its path, no matter where it leads. The ocean's reckoning is upon you. You cannot undo what has been done, but you can still make a choice. You can either embrace the truth and face its consequences, or you can walk away and leave the past where it belongs. The choice is yours. But remember this, the sea never forgets. It remembers everything. And it will judge you accordingly. M. Evelyn's voice faltered as she finished reading. The words on the page seemed to vibrate with a power that shook her to her core. The sea had been waiting for them, testing them, and now it was asking them to make a choice. What does it mean? Jonas asked, his voice barely a whisper. Evelyn set the letter down, her eyes clouded with uncertainty. I think it means we have to face the consequences of what we've done. The sea, it has its own reckoning. And we're part of it now. The silence that followed was heavy, the weight of the decision pressing down on both of them. Tully whimpered softly, sensing the shift in the air. Evelyn turned toward the window, her gaze drifting to the dark ocean beyond. The waves had calmed, but there was a sense of anticipation in the air, as if the sea was waiting for them to make their move. She felt the pull again, the same pull she had felt ever since she had arrived here. The sea was calling to her, urging her to take the next step. "Do you think we're supposed to go back to the cliffs?" Jonas asked. "Is that where we have to face the reckoning?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "I think so. But we have to be prepared. Whatever is waiting for us there, we have to face it together." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the decision settling between them. Finally, Jonas spoke. "Then let's go. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Evelyn smiled faintly, the warmth of his words grounding her. She picked up the box, tucking it into her bag, and together, they walked out into the night. The air was cooler now, the wind picking up again as they made their way toward the cliffs. The path was familiar now, the way the sea whispered to them as they moved closer to the edge. The ocean stretched out before them, its vastness almost suffocating. When they reached the cliffs, Evelyn stood at the edge, her heart pounding as she gazed down at the churning water below. The wind whipped around them, the waves crashing violently against the rocks, but she didn't move. The pendant in her pocket pulsed again, its glow faint but steady. She could feel it, the pull of the sea, urging her to step forward. "It's time," she whispered to herself. She stepped closer to the edge, the cold air rushing past her as the waves below crashed with unrelenting force. The sea was angry now, but there was something in the way it moved, something familiar. The rhythm of the ocean had changed. It was no longer a gentle lullaby, but a fierce and demanding call. "Are you ready?" The voice whispered in her mind. Evelyn closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and nodded. "Yes," she said. "We're ready." Act 13, The Sea's Reckoning. Evelyn's heart pounded as she stood at the edge of the cliffs, staring out at the churning sea below. The wind had picked up again, its gusts biting and relentless, whipping her hair around her face. The waves crashed violently against the rocks below, their roar like a battle cry, a reminder of the power of the ocean. The pendant in her pocket seemed to pulse in time with the crashing waves, as if it too were responding to the fury of the sea. Jonas stood beside her, his face pale, his eyes scanning the horizon. Tully, still at their feet, had become unusually quiet, his ears twitching as though he too could sense something in the air. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind of tension that only the sea could bring. "I feel like the ocean is alive," Jonas said, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Like it's waiting for something." Evelyn nodded, her gaze never leaving the waves. "It is waiting for us," she whispered. "The sea never forgets." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the pendant, its glow faint but steady. It had led them this far, guiding them through the storms, through the mysteries of the letters, the key, the box. Now, it was time to face what had been hidden beneath the surface all along. The reckoning that the keeper had spoken of. Jonas glanced at her, his face filled with uncertainty. What if we're not ready for this? What if the sea is too much for us to handle? Evelyn turned to him, her expression soft but determined. We have no choice. We've come this far, and we can't turn back now. The sea called us, and now we must listen. Whatever happens, we face it together. Jonas nodded slowly, his hand reaching out to touch hers. For a moment, they stood in silence, the wind howling around them, the ocean crashing below, but the connection between them was steady, grounding them in the midst of the storm. Together, he said softly. Evelyn squeezed his hand before releasing it, stepping forward toward the edge of the cliff. The waves below seemed to rise higher with each step she took, the sea pushing back against the land, as if urging her to stop. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Not when the truth was so close. She held the pendant in front of her, its glow brightening as she stepped closer to the precipice. The wind howled around her, tugging at her clothing, but she remained focused, her eyes locked on the swirling depths of the ocean. Follow the path, the voice whispered again, a soft, echoing presence in her mind. The sea holds the answer. But it is not without consequence. Evelyn closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the voice, the pull of the sea. The answer was within her reach, but it was up to her to take the final step. To face whatever came next. She opened her eyes, the sea before her now not just a vast expanse of water but a force, a living, breathing entity that had been waiting for her. Waiting for them. Suddenly, a light appeared in the distance, a shimmering glow rising from the depths of the sea. It was a soft, ethereal light, faint but unmistakable. It pulsed in time with the waves, rising and falling with the rhythm of the ocean. Evelyn felt her breath catch in her throat. The light was drawing her in, pulling her toward the water, toward the heart of the sea. She could feel the ocean's call in her bones, in her blood. It was as if the sea was speaking directly to her, urging her to come closer. Without thinking, she stepped forward, her feet moving instinctively toward the water. The sand beneath her feet felt soft, but the pull of the ocean was too strong. She could feel it, like a magnetic force, pulling her toward the edge. Jonas grabbed her arm, stopping her. Evelyn, wait. She turned to him, her eyes wide. I have to go, she said, her voice trembling. The sea is calling me. Jonas looked at her, torn between fear and something else, something deeper, something he couldn't quite explain. But what if it's not what we think? What if the sea is dangerous? Evelyn shook her head, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. The sea is dangerous, yes. But it's also the key. It's the only way to understand what's been hidden. Jonas hesitated, his eyes searching hers. Finally, he nodded. I'll go with you. Whatever happens, we face it together. Together. Evelyn smiled, the words grounding her in the chaos of the moment. She stepped forward once more, this time with Jonas at her side. They moved toward the edge of the cliff, the sea rising before them, its waves crashing like the beat of a drum, like a warning. The light from the depths of the ocean pulsed again, brighter this time, and the waves seemed to part as they stepped closer. The sound of the sea grew louder, but there was something else now, a voice, faint but clear. "You have come," the voice said, its tone both gentle and commanding. "You have awakened what was meant to remain hidden. And now, you must make your choice." Evelyn felt the weight of the words, the pressure of the choice that lay before them. The sea had already chosen them. But now, it was their turn to choose. To accept what had been given to them or to walk away and leave it all behind. She turned to Jonas, her heart heavy with the enormity of the decision. "We can't walk away now, can we?" Jonas shook his head. "No. We've come this far. We can't turn back." Together, they stepped forward, their feet sinking into the wet sand as the waves continued to crash around them. The light from the ocean grew brighter, enveloping them in its glow, and Evelyn felt a sudden sense of clarity, like everything had led to this moment. She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched the surface of the water. The moment her fingers made contact, a shock of energy surged through her, and she gasped, her body vibrating with the force of the sea's power. The water rose around them, swirling in a vortex of light and shadow, and Evelyn felt herself being pulled deeper, farther into the ocean. The truth was within reach, within her grasp. And she was ready. Act 14, The Heart of the Ocean. The moment Evelyn's fingers touched the water, everything changed. The world around her seemed to dissolve into a blur, the crashing waves falling silent, the wind stilling as though time itself had stopped. The only sound was her heartbeat, pounding in her ears, and the soft, rhythmic pulse that seemed to come from the very depths of the ocean. She didn't know how to describe it, how to explain the feeling that washed over her. It was as though she was no longer standing on the cliff, no longer touching the earth. It was as if she had become one with the sea, her soul merging with the very fabric of the water itself. For a moment, she felt weightless, suspended in the space between worlds. The sea's energy flowed through her, pulling her deeper, guiding her towards something unknown. Her mind swirled with images, visions of the past, the present, and the future, all merging into one overwhelming torrent of sensations. "You have come," the voice spoke again, its tone calm but firm. "You have awakened the truth, and now you must face it." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The voice wasn't just in her mind now, it was in the water, in the very air around her, like a presence that had always been there, waiting. Jonas, who had been standing beside her, suddenly reached out, grabbing her arm. "Evelyn." His voice was frantic, his grip tight. "What's happening? What's going on?" Evelyn turned to him, her eyes wide with a mix of wonder and fear. I don't know. But I can feel it. The sea, it's alive, Jonas. It's been waiting for us. Jonas looked at her, his face pale, his hand shaking as he held onto her. This isn't right, Evelyn. The water, it's too much. It's like the sea is trying to pull you in. We have to get out of here. It's not safe. But Evelyn didn't move. She couldn't. The pull of the ocean was too strong now, its rhythm syncing with her own pulse, urging her to come closer, to dive deeper. She felt as though the sea was calling her home, beckoning her into its embrace. Jonas, Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. I can't leave. Not now. The sea is showing me something. It's showing me everything. Jonas's grip tightened on her arm. Evelyn, you're scaring me. This isn't you. Whatever this is, it's not normal. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision. She wanted to fight it, wanted to pull away, to run back to the safety of the land. But the pull of the ocean was undeniable. It was more than just a call, it was a promise of knowledge, of answers, of something she had been searching for her entire life. You must face the heart of the ocean, the voice said again, this time stronger, as if it were speaking directly to her soul. The truth lies in the depths. But beware, the heart of the ocean is not without its cost. Only those who are willing to sacrifice can uncover what lies beneath. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as the weight of the words sank in. Sacrifice. What was she being asked to give? What did the sea want from her? Jonas, Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper, but the intensity of her gaze spoke volumes. I have to go. I have to find out what it means. Jonas stared at her for a moment, his face filled with fear and confusion. You can't do this, he said, his voice breaking. I can't lose you. Evelyn's heart ached at the pain in his voice. But she knew what she had to do. The sea had chosen her. It had guided her here for a reason, and she couldn't turn back now. Please, Jonas whispered, his voice raw with desperation. Don't do this. Evelyn shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. She reached out, gently cupping his face with both hands. I'm sorry, Jonas. But this is something I have to do. I can't explain it. I know I have to. The tears in his eyes mirrored her own as he nodded, his lips trembling. Then I'll be right here. Whatever happens, I'll be here. Evelyn smiled softly, a tear slipping down her cheek. She kissed his forehead gently, then turned back to the ocean. The water was calling her again, urging her forward, deeper. Without another word, she stepped into the waves. The cold water wrapped around her ankles, and with each step she took, the waves seemed to part, guiding her further into the ocean's depths. Her heart raced, the rhythm of the ocean in perfect sync with her own. She felt weightless, free, as if she were floating in a dream. The deeper she went, the stronger the pull became. The water surged around her, as though it had a life of its own. The ocean was no longer just water, it was energy, force, life itself. She could feel it coursing through her, its power both terrifying and intoxicating. "You are ready," the voice whispered again, its tone like the crashing of the waves. "You have unlocked the first door. But now you must go deeper." Evelyn's mind swirled with the sounds of the ocean, the ancient rhythms that had existed long before humanity had walked the earth. She was no longer just standing in the sea, she was becoming a part of it. She was merging with it, her soul connected to the vast, infinite expanse of water. Ahead of her, the water grew darker, the shadows of the deep stretching out like a vast unknown. But there, in the distance, she saw it aglow, faint but undeniable, rising from the depths. It was the same light that had appeared to her earlier, the same shimmer that had drawn her in. She swam toward it, her body moving with the effortless grace of someone who had always belonged in the sea. As she approached the light, she could feel it, the pulse of the ocean's heart, beating in time with her own. The truth was within her reach. The light grew brighter, and she felt herself being drawn closer, as though the sea were pulling her to the center of its power. She reached out, her hand trembling as she touched the source of the light. In an instant, the world around her shattered. Evelyn gasped as she was pulled into the light, her body surrounded by a warm, golden glow. The sea was no longer beneath her feet. She was floating in an endless expanse of light, surrounded by visions, images of the past, of the sea's ancient history, of everything that had ever been and everything that would ever be. She saw the keeper, standing on the cliffs, her face full of sorrow as she gazed out at the ocean. She saw the ocean's waves, crashing and retreating, the cycles of time playing out like the ebb and flow of the tides. And then, she saw it, the truth. The ocean was not just a force of nature. It was a living entity, an ancient being that held the secrets of the world within its depths. It was the keeper of memory, of life, of death, and of everything in between. "You have come," the voice said again, louder now, more powerful. "And now you know. The sea has given you the truth. But the question remains, what will you do with it?" Evelyn's heart raced as the light began to fade, the images receding into the distance. The ocean was pulling away, retreating into the depths. She was left standing in the light, the truth now within her grasp. But she knew what she had to do. The sea had given her the truth. Now, it was time to face the consequences. Act 15, The Consequence of Truth. The ocean was still, its surface calm and glassy, reflecting the pale moonlight above. Evelyn floated in the center of this vast expanse, her body weightless as the sea cradled her, but her mind was far from calm. The visions, the truth of the ocean still echoed in her thoughts, like a song she couldn't forget, the melody woven deep into the fibers of her being. The ocean had shown her its heart, its history, and its power. It had revealed its memories, and it had allowed her to see everything that had been hidden beneath the waves for so long. But now the silence was unbearable, as if the sea was waiting for something, waiting for her to make the next move. The truth weighed heavily on her shoulders, like a cloak of ancient knowledge that she wasn't sure how to carry. The ocean wasn't just a body of water, it was a living entity, one that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations, the passing of time itself, and it held the secrets of all things. The sea never forgets. Am's words echoed in her mind again, and the full weight of their meaning pressed down on her chest. But now, as Evelyn floated in the moonlit waters, it wasn't just the sea that had to reckon with the truth. It was her, and Jonas, and the world they had known. The ocean had given them a gift, but at what cost? What will you do with it? The voice had asked her. She hadn't answered then, but now, with the silence pressing in around her, she understood. She had been given the choice, the truth was hers to keep, but what would she do with it? She closed her eyes, trying to find peace in the calm that surrounded her, but the unease still gnawed at her. There were consequences to every truth, and the sea had made it clear that it wasn't just a force of nature, it was a force that could shape destinies, change the course of history. You must face what you've awakened. The voice again, this time stronger, more insistent. Evelyn's chest tightened as she opened her eyes, her gaze settling on the horizon where the ocean met the sky. She wasn't alone in the water anymore. The light from the ocean had faded, but there, in the distance, she saw a shadow, a figure moving toward her through the water. It was Jonas. He had been watching her for a while, his eyes scanning the water, his face a mixture of fear and determination. He had seen the transformation in her, the way she had changed when the sea had touched her, and he knew that the path they were on could no longer be undone. Evelyn felt a rush of emotions, relief, fear, and something else she couldn't name as Jonas swam closer. He reached her side, his hand gently resting on her arm as he looked into her eyes. She could see the worry in his expression, but she could also see something else, something stronger than fear. "Evelyn," Jonas whispered, his voice barely audible above the sound of the waves. "What did you see? What did the sea show you?" Evelyn turned to face him, her heart heavy. She had seen so much, too much to put into words. She could feel the weight of it all, the past, the present, and the future pressing down on her. "The truth," she said softly, her voice shaking. "The ocean. It's not just water. It's everything. It holds all the memories, all the histories, and all the destinies. It can change the course of time." Jonas frowned, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What does that mean? What does it mean for us?" Evelyn swallowed hard, the truth still settling in her chest like a weight she couldn't escape. "It means that we've awoken something. Something the sea doesn't want us to know. And now we have to face the consequences." The sea's voice had warned her, had warned them both, but she had been too focused on the truth to listen fully. She had awakened something in the depths of the ocean, something that had been buried for eons. And now, it was coming for them. A shiver ran down her spine as she looked around, as though she could sense something in the water, something moving beneath the surface, just out of sight. The water felt colder now, as though the very depths of the ocean were reaching out to pull them back. What do we do now? Jonas asked, his voice full of uncertainty. Evelyn looked at him, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision they now had to make. We have to go back, she said, her voice firm. The ocean has shown us what it's capable of. We have to face what we've awakened, or we'll never be free. Jonas nodded slowly, though his eyes betrayed his fear. And what do we do if the sea won't let us go? If it tries to take us? Evelyn didn't have an answer. The sea had made it clear that it wasn't something to be trifled with, that it could reshape reality itself. She had seen it, how the ocean could change the past, the present, and the future. But they had no choice. They had to return to the shore, to face whatever was waiting for them. If they didn't, the ocean's reckoning would consume them. Together, they swam back toward the shore, the pull of the ocean growing stronger with each stroke. The water felt colder now, the waves more powerful, as though the sea was trying to hold them in place. When they reached the shore, Evelyn felt the familiar ground beneath her feet. But something had changed. The air felt heavier, charged with an energy she couldn't explain. The sky above them was darker now, clouds swirling as if a storm was brewing on the horizon. Jonas turned to her, his eyes wide with fear. It's not over, is it? Evelyn shook her head. No. The ocean has given us the truth, but it hasn't let us go. And now we have to face what comes next. They stood in silence, the weight of their decision pressing down on them. The sea had awakened something within them, something ancient, and now they had to live with the consequences of their choices. But Evelyn knew one thing for certain. They were no longer just visitors to the ocean. They were part of its story. Act 16, The Reckoning begins. The night was still, but the air was thick with an energy that felt alive, as if the very ground beneath them were holding its breath. The ocean roared in the distance, its waves crashing violently against the shore. But this time, it wasn't the usual rhythm of the tides. No. This time, the ocean felt different. Angry. As if it had been awakened from a deep slumber and was now demanding attention. Evelyn stood at the edge of the cliff, her heart pounding in her chest as the wind whipped around her. The pendant, still clutched tightly in her hand, glowed faintly, its soft light pulsing in time with the crash of the waves below. She could feel the ocean's power, its presence, like a living force that was drawing her in. Jonas stood beside her, his face pale, his eyes scanning the horizon. Tully, at his feet, had grown quiet, his tail tucked between his legs. The animal sensed something was wrong, something was coming, but he couldn't understand it, just as they couldn't. What happens now? Jonas asked, his voice strained. What does the ocean want from us? Evelyn turned to him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. I don't know, she whispered. But we have to face it. We have to face what we've awoken. The words from the keeper echoed in her mind again, you have disturbed the balance. And now, you must face the consequences. She had been warned, but there was no turning back now. The truth had been revealed, and now, the ocean was demanding payment for its secrets. Jonas grabbed her arm, his grip tight. Evelyn, we can't just stand here. We have to get away. The ocean, it's not safe anymore. If it's angry, it could. It's too late, Evelyn interrupted, her voice trembling. The ocean has already chosen us. And we can't run from what's coming. The ground beneath them trembled slightly, a deep rumble that seemed to come from the earth itself. The wind howled again, stronger now, and the waves below surged higher, as if responding to the unseen force in the air. I think it's too late for anything but facing it, Evelyn whispered, staring at the churning sea. Whatever comes, we face it together. Jonas stared at her, his eyes full of fear, but also a determination that matched her own. Together, he said quietly. Suddenly, the sea seemed to pulse, as if responding to their words. The air grew colder, and the light from the pendant flickered violently. Evelyn's chest tightened as she realized that they were no longer in control. The ocean had taken the reins. From the water, a figure emerged. At first, it was a shape in the distance, just a shadow against the horizon. But as it drew closer, the figure became clearer, a woman, draped in the flowing tendrils of seaweed, her body glowing faintly in the moonlight. Her eyes were pale, almost translucent, and her expression was both serene and filled with sorrow. She floated above the water, her body not quite touching the waves, as if she were an extension of the sea itself. Evelyn's heart raced as the figure approached. She had seen her before, in the visions the ocean had shown her, in the depths of the water. This was the keeper, the same woman who had warned her, the same presence that had guided her to the truth. But this time, she wasn't just a vision. She was real. The keeper stopped in front of them, her pale eyes fixing on Evelyn. You have come, she said softly, her voice like the sound of distant waves. You have awakened the truth, and now you must pay the price. Evelyn's throat tightened as she stared at the woman. What do you mean? What price? The keeper's expression didn't change, but her eyes seemed to darken. The ocean does not give freely. It demands a price for its truths. And you have taken more than you realize. Jonas stepped forward, his voice trembling with fear. We didn't mean to disturb anything. We only wanted to understand. The keeper's gaze flicked to him, her expression softening slightly. You may not have meant it, but the ocean's memory is long. It has waited centuries for someone to come. And now, You must face the consequences. Evelyn swallowed hard, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had seen the ocean's heart. She had felt its power. But now, standing before the keeper, she realized just how much they had awakened. The ocean was not just a force of nature, it was a force that shaped the very fabric of existence, a keeper of time itself. And they had stirred it from its slumber. What do we have to do? Evelyn asked, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. The keeper's eyes softened again, but there was no warmth in them. You must return what you have taken. Evelyn's heart sank. Return it? But we didn't take anything. We only followed the path the ocean gave us. The ocean's truth is not for mortals to hold, the keeper said. It was never meant to be understood. And now you must give it back. Jonas looked at Evelyn, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Give it back. How? Evelyn shook her head, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. The ocean's truth, the pendant, the key, the truth had been hidden for a reason. And they had unlocked something they weren't meant to understand. But how could they return it? The keeper's gaze never wavered. The ocean will take what belongs to it. But you will be the ones to choose how much you are willing to give. The sea does not forget. And those who disturb its balance must pay the price. Evelyn stood still, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had seen the truth, and now she had to decide whether to accept the cost. Jonas, she whispered, her voice trembling. What should we do? Jonas stared at the keeper, then at Evelyn. His face was filled with fear, but also with a sense of resignation. We don't have a choice, do we? Evelyn looked back at the keeper. No, she said softly. We don't. The keeper nodded, her expression unreadable. Then the price is set. The sea will take what is owed. And you will have to face the consequences of your choice. The waves crashed violently against the shore as the keeper's form began to dissolve, fading back into the sea, leaving only the sound of the waves in her wake. The ocean was calm again, but Evelyn could feel its presence, its power, like a storm waiting to break. Evelyn and Jonas stood in silence, the weight of what had just transpired settling over them. The ocean had given them the truth, but it had also taken something from them. Now, they had to face the reckoning. Act 17, The Sea's Judgment. The air was thick with the scent of salt and damp earth, the waves crashing violently against the shore. Evelyn stood at the edge of the cliffs, her heart heavy, as the weight of the ocean's truth settled deeper in her chest. The keeper's words echoed in her mind, like a distant warning that had come too late. You must return what you have taken. The ocean had given them its truth, its secrets, and now, it was demanding payment. But what could they return? What had they truly taken? The pendant, the key, the letters, they were all just pieces of the puzzle, fragments of a truth they had barely begun to understand. Jonas stood beside her, his eyes scanning the horizon, his face pale from the fear and uncertainty that clung to the air. Tully, ever loyal, sat quietly at his feet, his body tense, sensing the change that had swept through the land. Evelyn. Jonas whispered, his voice tight with concern. What does it mean? What do we have to do? Evelyn turned to him, her eyes filled with both confusion and determination. I don't know. But I think we've opened something we weren't meant to. The ocean. It's not just a body of water. It's alive, Jonas. And we've disturbed its balance. The ground beneath them trembled again, the vibrations so faint they could almost be ignored. But Evelyn couldn't ignore it. The sea had warned them. It had given them the truth, but in doing so, it had also set the wheels of fate in motion. The tide was coming in faster now, as if the ocean were preparing for something. We need to go back to the water, she said softly, her voice almost lost in the roar of the waves. We need to give it back. Jonas's face twisted with fear. Give it back. How? Evelyn shook her head, her mind racing. I don't know. But the ocean has a memory. It will take what belongs to it. And we have to be ready for whatever comes next. They stood in silence for a moment, the tension growing, the wind howling around them like a warning. The ocean had already made its judgment. It had been waiting for them to make a choice, and now that choice had been made. The waves surged again, higher this time, crashing against the rocks with greater force. The air was charged with electricity, the sea's power growing stronger by the second. Evelyn's heart pounded as she stepped forward, the pull of the ocean once again drawing her in. Are you sure? Jonas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you really think this is what we have to do? Evelyn turned to him, her expression resolute. We don't have a choice, Jonas. The ocean has chosen us. Now, we have to face it. She took a deep breath, and without waiting for another word, she stepped toward the water. The waves seemed to part as she waded into the sea, the cold water rushing around her ankles, then her knees. She felt the weight of the ocean, the depth of its power, and the responsibility that now weighed on her. Jonas hesitated for a moment, but then he followed her, stepping into the water beside her. The ocean was different now, more alive, more aware. The water seemed to swirl around them, its current growing stronger as they ventured deeper. The pendant in Evelyn's hand pulsed again, its light glowing brighter as they moved forward, as if guiding them, pulling them closer to something unknown. The waves crashed harder now, the water rising faster, but Evelyn didn't stop. She couldn't. Ahead of them, the water seemed to shift, parting in a way that seemed almost unnatural. The light from the pendant grew stronger, and for a moment, the water seemed to glow with an ethereal radiance. It was as though they had crossed into another world, one where the laws of nature no longer applied, where the ocean itself was alive and watching. The deeper they went, the more Evelyn felt the pull. The ocean's rhythm was now in sync with her heartbeat, the waves crashing like a drum beat in her chest. She could feel the weight of the ocean's power, its endless depths, pulling her further, drawing her closer to the heart of its reckoning. "You have disturbed the balance," the voice of the keeper echoed once more in her mind, clearer now than ever before. "And now, you must face the consequences of your choices." Evelyn's heart raced as she moved forward, the water now waist deep, the waves rising higher. She felt Jonas's hand gripping hers tightly, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. The sea was guiding her, and she had to follow. And then, as if in response to her thoughts, the water parted before them, revealing a dark, swirling vortex in the depths. The light from the pendant pulsed one final time before it went out, leaving them in the cold, dark water. The vortex in front of them seemed to be alive, its tendrils swirling like the currents of the sea itself. It beckoned them forward, the depths of the ocean calling to them with an ancient power. Evelyn could feel it, the pull of the truth, the weight of the ocean's reckoning. "What is that?" Jonas whispered, his voice filled with awe and fear. "I don't know," Evelyn said, her voice barely audible. "But I think it's the heart of the ocean. The truth we were meant to find." With a final, steadying breath, Evelyn stepped forward, feeling the pull of the vortex drawing her in. Jonas hesitated for a moment, but then he followed her, his hand still gripping hers. As they stepped into the vortex, the water closed in around them, and for a moment, everything went black. When Evelyn opened her eyes, she was no longer in the ocean. She was in a place that defied explanation. It was as though she had been transported to another world, a world that existed beyond time, beyond space. The air was thick with the scent of salt, the water surrounding her but not touching her, as though the sea had become something else entirely. In front of her stood a figure tall, radiant, with eyes that seemed to glow with the light of the ocean itself. The figure was both human and something more, something ancient. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat as she realized who it was. The keeper. She was standing in front of the heart of the ocean, the source of its power, the place where the truth was held. "Evelyn," the keeper said, her voice soft but powerful. "You have come. And now, you must choose." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she stepped forward. "Choose." The keeper nodded. "The truth of the ocean is yours to keep. But it comes with a cost. What you have awakened cannot be undone. The ocean will remember." Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she realized what she had to do. She had seen the truth. She had felt the power of the ocean. And now, she had to make a choice. She could take the truth, hold onto it, and change the course of history. Or she could return it, and let the ocean remain untouched, as it had always been. The choice was hers. Act 18, The Price of Knowledge. The air was heavy, thick with the weight of an ancient power. Evelyn stood in the heart of the ocean, facing the keeper, an ethereal figure whose presence seemed to stretch beyond time itself. The water surrounding them was still, and the glowing light of the ocean pulsed with an energy so strong that it seemed to vibrate in her very bones. She could feel Jonas beside her, his hand gripping hers tightly, but his presence felt distant, as if they were no longer entirely in the same world. The ocean had separated them from everything they knew, separated them from time, from reality. This was no longer a journey they could walk back from. Evelyn, the keeper's voice echoed through the water, soft and commanding. You have come for the truth. And now, you must choose. The truth. Evelyn had seen it all, the ocean's secrets, its power, its memories. She had felt its pull, had embraced its depths. But now, standing in front of the keeper, she realized the magnitude of the choice before her. What would the ocean demand in return for what it had shown her? The keeper's eyes, glowing with the light of the ocean, studied her carefully. The truth of the ocean is not meant for mortals. It is a burden that comes with a price. Evelyn swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. What price? She asked, her voice trembling. The keeper's gaze softened, but there was no warmth in it, only the weight of centuries of knowledge. The price is what you hold most dear. The ocean has given you its truth, but it is not without consequence. You must decide whether to keep the knowledge or return it to the depths from which it came. Evelyn looked at Jonas, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. He didn't speak, but his expression told her everything she needed to know. He was scared of the ocean, scared of what they had uncovered, and scared of what might come next. But Evelyn knew that she couldn't run from this. They had come too far, and the ocean had shown her the truth. She couldn't deny it anymore. She couldn't unsee what she had learned. But was she willing to pay the price? Jonas's voice broke through her thoughts. Evelyn, I don't know what this means. What the ocean's showing us. It's too much. I can't lose you. She turned to him, her heart aching. The love they shared was deep, and the thought of losing him was unbearable. But she couldn't ignore what the ocean had revealed to her. She couldn't turn away from the truth now. We have no choice, Jonas, she said softly, her voice filled with a quiet determination. The ocean has shown us its heart, and now we have to make a choice. We have to decide what we're willing to give up for it. Jonas looked at her, his eyes filled with sorrow and love. But I can't lose you, Evelyn. I can't live without you. The keeper's voice interrupted their moment. The ocean has no mercy for the weak. The price of knowledge is steep. Are you prepared to pay it? Evelyn's mind raced as she stood there, facing the truth of the ocean, facing the cost of what they had learned. She had seen the past, the present, and the future. She had felt the rhythm of time in the ocean's depths. But now, as the weight of the decision settled over her, she realized that the knowledge came with more than just understanding. It came with sacrifice. Was she willing to give up everything she loved in exchange for the truth? The answer seemed to come to her in that moment, deep within her heart. The ocean had shown her everything, but it had also shown her the cost of keeping its knowledge. The sea was not just a force of nature, it was a living entity, a keeper of time, a protector of balance. And Evelyn understood now that some things were never meant to be known, some truths were too dangerous to hold. "I can't take it," she whispered, her voice shaking with the weight of her decision. "The price is too high." Jonas stepped closer to her, his hand gently touching hers. "Then we give it back," he said quietly. The keeper's gaze remained steady, unwavering, as she spoke again. "You have made your choice. The ocean will reclaim what it has given. But know this: the truth will never leave you. It will remain within your heart, a part of you forever." Evelyn nodded, her heart heavy with the decision. "I understand," she said softly. The keeper stepped back, her form shimmering with the light of the ocean. "Then the reckoning is complete. The price has been paid. The ocean will return to its slumber." With that, the keeper's form began to dissolve, fading into the light of the ocean as though she had never existed. The water around them began to calm, the waves settling as the energy that had filled the air receded. For a moment, there was silence. The ocean seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something. Then, slowly, the water parted, revealing a path that led back to the shore. The ocean was calm again, but the memory of what had just transpired lingered in the air, like the aftertaste of a dream that could not be forgotten. Evelyn and Jonas stood in silence, the weight of the decision still pressing down on them. They had given back what they had taken from the ocean. They had chosen to return the truth, to let the sea remain as it was, untouched by the knowledge they had uncovered. Evelyn felt a deep sense of peace settle over her, as though the ocean had accepted her choice, had allowed her to return to the world of mortals. But the truth of the sea, the knowledge she had gained, would never leave her. It would stay within her, a part of her forever. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Jonas asked, his voice low and unsure. Evelyn turned to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and relief. I think we did what we had to. Some truths are meant to remain hidden. Some things are too dangerous to know." Jonas nodded, his face reflecting the same understanding. "Then let's go home," he said softly. "Let's leave the ocean to its secrets." And as they turned to walk back toward the shore, Evelyn couldn't help but feel that, despite everything, the ocean had given them a gift: not just the truth, but the wisdom to know when to let it go. Act 19, The Aftermath of Truth. The first rays of dawn touched the horizon, casting a soft golden light over the ocean. The waves had calmed, their fury dissipated, and the sea stretched out in front of them endless, vast, and serene. But for Evelyn and Jonas, the quiet was deafening. The ocean, once a source of mystery and awe, now felt like a distant memory, an untouchable world they could never return to. Evelyn stood at the edge of the shore, her feet sinking into the soft sand, as she gazed out at the water. Her heart was heavy with the weight of everything they had experienced. She had returned the truth, but in doing so, something inside her had changed. The ocean's power, its ancient wisdom, had become a part of her, and no matter how far she walked away from it, she knew it would never truly leave her. Beside her, Jonas stood silently, his eyes scanning the horizon. Tully, as always, was by his side, his tail wagging gently as he sniffed the air. The world seemed to have returned to its normal rhythm, but for Evelyn and Jonas, nothing was the same. "We've done it," Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. "We've returned the truth to the ocean." Jonas nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful, distant. "But it doesn't feel like it's over," he said quietly. "We did what we were supposed to do, but I can't shake the feeling that the ocean is still with us." Evelyn turned to him, her eyes meeting his. "It is," she said softly. "The ocean never truly leaves you. It's a part of everything now. But it's also something we can never fully understand. We can only live with it." Jonas sighed, his gaze drifting to the horizon again. "It's hard to just let it go. All that we've learned. The knowledge, the power. It's like it's a part of us now." Evelyn nodded, feeling the same weight pressing down on her chest. The ocean had shown them its heart, but it had also shown them its price. And now, they had to live with the consequences of knowing something that was never meant to be understood. They couldn't just go back to their old lives, too much had changed. But despite the burden of what they had learned, Evelyn also felt something else, a sense of peace. The ocean had taken what was owed, and now it was time for them to move on, to find their place in the world again. They had given the ocean its truth, and in return, it had allowed them to walk away with their lives, with the knowledge that they had made the right choice. Evelyn turned to Jonas, her heart swelling with a deep, quiet gratitude. "We can't change what happened," she said. "But we can choose how we move forward. Together." Jonas smiled faintly, a sad but understanding smile. "Together," he agreed. They stood in silence for a long time, letting the rhythm of the waves calm them. The sun was rising higher now, casting long shadows across the beach. For the first time in what felt like forever, Evelyn felt a sense of normalcy, even if it was fleeting. They had faced the ocean's reckoning, and now it was time to face their future. The sea had given them the truth, but it had also taken something from them. It had taken their innocence, their understanding of the world, and it had left them with a deep, unshakable knowledge that would always be a part of them. But it had also left them with each other. And in the end, that was what mattered most. As they turned to walk away from the shore, Evelyn felt a lightness in her heart, a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. They had survived. They had made it through the storm. And now, they could begin to heal. Hours later, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to emerge, Evelyn and Jonas sat on the porch of the cottage. The night was still, the air cool and crisp, and the only sound was the faint rustling of leaves in the breeze. They had returned to the life they had left behind, but everything felt different now. Evelyn looked out at the sea, the gentle rhythm of the waves comforting her. She had learned so much, but now she knew that the ocean's mysteries were not hers to solve. They were ancient, eternal, and she could only respect them from a distance. "I think I'm ready," she said softly, breaking the silence. Jonas turned to her, his brow furrowing in curiosity. "Ready for what?" "To move on," she replied, her voice filled with quiet resolve. "The ocean has given me everything it can. Now, I have to find my own path. And so do you." Jonas was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant as he processed her words. Finally, he nodded. "You're right. We've been through something no one else will ever understand. But it doesn't define us. It's part of us, but it doesn't have to be everything." Evelyn smiled, her heart swelling with the strength of their bond. They had both been changed by the ocean, but they had survived. And now, they could find peace. Tully barked from the yard, drawing their attention. The dog ran over, wagging his tail excitedly as he dropped a stick at their feet. Evelyn laughed softly, reaching down to grab the stick. "Well, I guess he's ready for us to play." Jonas chuckled, shaking his head. "He's never really given us a choice." Together, they stood and walked into the yard, their footsteps light in the evening air. The ocean was no longer a mystery they needed to solve. It was just a part of the world, a force to be respected, but not feared. And as they threw the stick for Tully, Evelyn realized that they had found something more important than the truth of the sea. They had found each other. And that was enough. Final chapter, The Peaceful Return. A year had passed since Evelyn and Jonas stood at the edge of the ocean, facing the vast, unknowable sea. Time had healed the wounds of their past, and the weight of the mysteries they had uncovered had slowly faded into something they could live with. Each new day felt like a fresh beginning, a new chance to create a life that was theirs, no longer burdened by the secrets of the ocean, but shaped by the strength they had gained from it. The first light of dawn broke through the horizon, casting a soft golden glow across the calm ocean. The waves lapped gently against the shore, a quiet contrast to the storms that had raged in their hearts and minds. Evelyn stood by the window, gazing out at the sea, her heart filled with a peaceful understanding. The ocean was still there, vast and unyielding, but no longer a place of mystery or fear. It was simply part of the world, as it had always been. Jonas appeared beside her, his presence warm and comforting. He gave her a small smile, one filled with the quiet assurance that only time and experience could bring. The past was behind them now, and they had learned to live with the knowledge the ocean had gifted and taken. "You've been up for a while," Jonas remarked, stepping closer to her. Evelyn smiled back, turning to face him. "Just thinking about everything. About the ocean, about what we've learned. But mostly about how much has changed." Jonas nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "It feels like we've finally found our way back. Back to something normal. And yet, nothing feels quite the same, does it?" "No," Evelyn agreed, her voice soft. "But that's okay. We're not who we were before. And I don't think we'll ever be, but that doesn't mean it's bad. We've seen what others can't. We've felt what others can't. And now we have each other, and that's enough." The quiet peace of the morning enveloped them both, and for the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt truly at ease. The ocean had revealed its secrets, but it had also shown her that some things were better left untold, that the balance between knowledge and wisdom was delicate, and that the journey itself mattered more than any answers. Jonas squeezed her hand. "We can't undo what's been done. But we've made our peace with it. Together." Evelyn smiled, her heart swelling with the quiet joy that came from knowing they had weathered the storm and had come out stronger for it. "Together," she whispered. The years they had spent chasing the truth had taught them many things, but perhaps the greatest lesson was this: sometimes, the greatest discovery lies not in uncovering what was hidden, but in learning to live with what you've found. As they stepped outside, the soft sea breeze brushed past them, and Tully bounded ahead, chasing the waves at the edge of the beach. The world felt light, free of the burden of their past struggles. The ocean remained before them, vast and deep, but it was no longer a threat, it was simply another part of the world they shared. They had learned to respect it, to accept it, and to understand that some mysteries were not theirs to solve. The waves still crashed, the tide still ebbed and flowed, but for Evelyn and Jonas, the sea no longer held dominion over them. They had faced its reckoning and survived, and now, they could move forward. The truth of the ocean was no longer a shadow hanging over them. It was simply another story in their past, one that would shape their future, but not define it. And with each step they took, they embraced the possibility of a new beginning. Together, they walked along the beach, the sound of the waves in their ears, the vast expanse of the ocean before them, but their hearts light with the knowledge that they had found peace not in the answers they had sought, but in the journey they had shared. And that was enough.